Hello, my name is Irene Kapsis, and I'm Deputy General Counsel at the New York City Department of Design and Construction, also referred to as DDC in short. On behalf of the agency, our Commissioner, Tom Foley, our Deputy Commissioner and General Counsel, David Rowley, and the entire not-for-profit reimbursement team at DDC, we would like to thank our not-for-profit organizations and hospitals for all the important services that you provide to all of the people in New York City. In order to assist you, we've put together a series of videos that are geared to assist and give you an overview of the not-for-profit reimbursement program at DDC. We have 4 brief videos, less than 15 minutes or approximately 15 minutes, where we go over each step of the process. The first video is this video, which provides an overview of the program and the legal rules that apply. And it is meant to give you an overview of the process. The second video talks about how you create a budget for your nonprofit or hospital to get reimbursed by the city, to have a plan of what will be reimbursed by the City of New York pursuant to this program. And then the third video is about how to get the final contract registered by the New York City Controller's Office. And we facilitate that, but we need your assistance in order to get everything ready for submission. And then the final stage of the process is reimbursement and all of the things that we're going to need from the organization in order to finalize the project and actually give you your funds. So we have checklists for each stage of the process, but we wanted to give you an overview of all of the things that you're going to need in brief video clippings so that you and your staff can review this at times that are most convenient and relevant for your project with DDC. So what is DDC? DDC is a construction management agency that does construction efforts on behalf of various New York City agencies for New York City streets and New York City public buildings. And we handle $15 billion worth of capitally funded construction. That's part of the reason why this non-for-profit reimbursement program is with DDC, because we're experts in capital funding and all of the legal requirements that apply. So your organization has received funding, if you're viewing this video, either from New York City Borough President or a New York City Council member, or potentially from both. And that means that you have an allocation of funds that are segmented and put aside for your organization. No funding is final until a project actually has a contract that's registered with the New York City Controller's Office, but there is an allocation of funds, and we have to follow an entire reimbursement process in order to assist you with getting those funds. So that's why we named this program as a not-for-profit reimbursement program as opposed to a grants program, because there are certain steps that you'll need to do in order for us to be able to reimburse you for the equipment and vehicles that you have purchased. In order to help facilitate this process, we have literally all of the documents and checklists and contracts that apply to the program on our website. We have everything in details on the form page, but we have an entire web page and website that goes through all of the details of DDC's not-for-profit reimbursement program. And we have this information there so that we have everything readily accessible to you and the representatives of your organization that are working on these projects with DDC. So why is DDC and DDC's law division specifically overseeing this program? And there's a reason for that. There's a whole bunch of attorneys that are reviewing these projects because we are creating a security interest that applies pursuant to a whole set of laws as ratified in New York State, which is referred to as Article 9 as the Uniform Commercial Code. And just to give you a broad overview, the UCC, which is Uniform Commercial Code in short, relates to how one has a final and perfected, which is a legal term, security interest in specific items of equipment and vehicles. And to think about it in more common terms, it's similar to having a mortgage on a property. And the first in right is the first to file and provide notice to other parties that there's an interest in that item. And the similar rules apply to equipment with UCC financing statements that are filed with New York Department of State, and then for vehicles with a lien that's filed on the vehicle itself. We also have to comply with the New York City Charter provisions, and most importantly, the New York City Controller Directive number 10, which goes over all the details of what needs to be complied with in order to have a viable project for reimbursement by the city. And it's a set of rules that have been put together by both the City of New York and the Controller's Office. Then we also have to comply with New York State Local Finance Law, Section 11, which relates to the useful life periods of items that are reimbursed with capital funding. So there's a whole set of laws that apply to this program. And at DDC, we help ensure that we have compliance with those laws by having a contractual arrangement with the not-for-profits and hospitals that enter into these reimbursement arrangements with the city. There's two documents that apply. It's a funding agreement and a security agreement. The funding agreement goes through the requirements that the nonprofit needs to keep in mind, or the funding recipient rather, needs to keep in mind for the items that are being reimbursed. There's a 5-year use requirement, typically that will apply, and there is a city purpose covenant that mandates that these items are used for a city purpose that has been approved by the city, and that, of course, that the items are not used in a discriminatory way. Those are some of the key items that are included in the funding agreement, but of course we have the funding agreement templates on our website, so we encourage you to take a look at what those requirements are as soon as you know that you have a viable project with DDC that you will be working on. The security agreement also is an important document from a legal perspective. It establishes the city's lien interest pursuant to Article 9 of the Uniform Commercial Code, and it basically creates a security interest where the city has a first priority lien on those items of either equipment or vehicle that are reimbursed by the city. So we want to give you an overview of the process, and this is a timeline of how things go in order to get reimbursement by DDC. First, there's a funding allocation by either a New York City Borough President or a New York City Council member. And that means that there is money set aside for your organization's particular reimbursement project. In order to have a project that is able to proceed, though, we have to create a viable budget, and it has to go through legal review so that we can prepare the legal agreements that are necessary to facilitate the reimbursement. After that, we have what's called a pre-CP review. And CP basically means certificate to proceed, and it's a review process that we have to go through with our oversights at the Mayor's Office of Management and Budget. They review all of our projects to ensure that we comply with the rules that apply to capital funded equipment and vehicle items. Once we get the certificate to proceed, which is also called the CP, then we can proceed with your project for reimbursement purposes. And then we are ready for the next step, which is having executed agreements that are ready for New York City registration with the New York City Controller's Office. We also want to highlight that at the New York City Controller's Office registration point of your project, that is when you have, instead of only having an allocation of funds, you have designated funds specifically for your organization that are mandated for your project at that point in time. So this is also the safest time to actually equipment any items of equipment or vehicles that are going to be reimbursed pursuant to this program. And last but not least, we have the payment requisition process, and there are certain items that we will need to have on file in order to facilitate the reimbursement of your equipment or vehicle project. We have a checklist that correlates to all of the items that you need to supply, but it is a separate process, and there are a series of submissions that your organization would need to submit to DDC. And once we have all of those items, then we can reimburse your organization and you can start getting that payment that has been allocated to your organization for the purchase of either a vehicle or equipment pursuant to the project that you have with DDC. So in order to keep things as simple as possible, we've created 3 checklists. Our 3 checklist approach is geared to give you a guideline of what you need to submit at each stage of your project. The first stage is the budget and pre-CP review stage. It gives us everything that we need in order to help create a budget that will get reimbursed by the city. The second checklist is the registration checklist, and that checklist contains all of the items that we need in order to ensure that we can get your project registered and the contracts registered with the New York City Comptroller's Office. And then the last item is reimbursement and all of the items that we're going to need in order to finalize your project and actually give you the money that's been designated for your organization. So we wanted to flag a few points in the process that trip up organizations in order to give you guys a heads up and to have you prepared. This program, again, is a reimbursement program. As a reimbursement program, you have to keep in mind that all of the upfront costs of purchasing these items are the responsibility of your organization, and we do not do financing. This is a reimbursement. The second item that we also need to keep in mind is that there are procurement requirements. Those are listed in the funding agreement, and you can take a look at those on our website in the funding agreements that we have posted online. And it's important to keep in mind that we as a city want to make sure that taxpayer money is being used to items that are being reimbursed that are at the best price possible. And so please take a look at the procurement requirements that are in the funding agreement to ensure that the items that we are going to be reimbursing follow those guidelines. Then we also have, for equipment projects that have software included, software that is not transferable on its own terms creates a concern for the city because we need these items of equipment to be readily transferable based on license agreements that apply to the particular pieces of equipment that allow for the City of New York to have an interest in that equipment with the software. So if you have a software project where you have a license or end user license agreement with the provider that has any provisions that are contrary to that and are not assignable on their terms, then please flag that to your project manager and we will work with you to make arrangements with the software provider, hopefully, in order to be able to facilitate your project. One of the things that also comes up with equipment projects is minimally attached equipment. When you have minimally attached equipment, then the city has concerns about those items of equipment with respect to reimbursement pursuant to this program, because it creates a situation where real property laws apply and those minimally attached items become part of the real property. If there's a mortgage holder or a landlord involved, then the city wants to make sure that those items of equipment are protected from any other parties that may have an interest in those items. So please keep that in mind, because when we have that situation, then we need to make arrangements either with the mortgage holders or with the landlord to ensure that they acknowledge that the pieces of equipment that are funded by the City of New York are not fixtures and that they're movable pieces of equipment. And that process takes time, so we're flagging that up front. And if you have a vehicle project, then in order to have a final security interest that's in the City of New York, that process comes easily because we just file a lien against the vehicle certificate of title. But if you have an equipment project, then pursuant to Article 9 of the Uniform Commercial Code, also referred to as UCC, we have to file a financing statement with the New York State Department of State that says that the City of New York has a first priority lien on those items that are reimbursed by the city. If, however, there's any other parties that have financing statements also on file with the New York Department of State, then what ends up happening is that we have to go through each and every one of those debtors or creditors that may have a first priority lien, and we need to have all of those things resolved before the city can have its financing statement filed with the New York Department of State, and that process takes time. So if your organization does not have many liens on file with the New York State Department of State, then that's great news if you have an equipment project. But if you do know, if you're a hospital organization or if you're a not-for-profit that is aware of financial arrangements that may be on file with the Department of State due to various financing arrangements, please make sure to let your project manager know. And please also reach out to DDC's legal team, because then we can start working on those things sooner rather than later. For next steps, the most important part, we want you to take notice of our webpage. We have an abundance of information that's there in order to help you and guide you every step of the way. Our goal is to assist the elected officials with getting the not-for-profits and the hospital organizations that receive funding by the City of New York pursuant to this program with their funds, and we want to help make sure that each and every project goes through. So please take a little bit of time and watch each and every one of DDC's NRP videos that we provide, because they will help you every step of the way. And for the 3 checklists that we have, please make sure that you complete every item on those checklists. And if you have any questions, please reach out to the project manager who will be working with you on your particular project, because we want to help you succeed. And the checklist that we have put together have a series of information and items that we have put together over the course of many years, and a lot of time has been put in order to help make the process as clear-cut as possible. So what we want from everyone is we want to let everyone know that DDC's goal is to support our elected officials, our borough presidents, our New York City Council members with their goals of providing funding to not-for-profits and hospitals that provide important services to the City of New York. DDC is dedicated and committed in helping with that process and with the reimbursements for the projects that have been allocated by our elected officials. And at the same time, we work with the New York City Mayor's Office of Management and Budget and the New York City Law Department to ensure that we facilitate the process and at the same time protect taxpayer money. So one of the most important things, though, in order to help facilitate your project is to please keep in touch with us. When you receive notice of a project from DDC, please keep in touch with your project manager. And if you have any questions, please let us know. We are more than happy to meet with you and go over every step of the process and help with in any way we can. So if you have any questions, if you can't reach out to anyone in particular and you haven't been able to talk to anyone, we also have a general email account that we check daily, and that's at nrp@ddc.nyc.gov. And we have that there so that we can be accessible to you. DDC is geared to helping our funding recipients and our elected officials and the City of New York. So if you need anything, please let us know. Thank you for taking the time to view this video, and we hope this information is helpful, and please keep in touch. Thank you.